most important idea in the history of civilization is due process. The prospect that you could get it wrong. You require certain procedures to make sure you don't err, you don't harm civilians, you don't harm innocent people. Due process enshrined over 8 centuries ago in the Magna Carta. That's why it's so important that we entertain this particular discussion with the greatest amount of sobriety, because it determines the fate of the United States as a nation. Now, I would submit that the United States has engaged in aggressive war in violation of international standards on at least 4 occasions since 9/11. First of all, although it may sound jarring to many of you, certainly those in Congress, I would submit that 9/11 was not war in the international sense, that there was not the same level of danger that's required in order to unleash the fury of arms and violence against a population, civilian or otherwise, engaged in hostilities. And I want to submit, at least by inference, a conclusion in that regard by suggesting 9/11 was unique in 2 major respects. Number one, because the alleged offender, belligerent, was not a nation, there is no endpoint that can be conceived to the so-called war. That is, we have by definition a perpetual war. No one has even insinuated benchmarks whereby someone say, all right, the war against international terror is over. So that's some suggestion to suggest that this may not really rise to the level of the war because permanent war and freedom are irreconcilable. The second element about 9/11 that's unique in the annals of warfare is that the battlefield then becomes everywhere on the planet, because what you're fighting is a tactic, not a prescribed geographical territory. So that means military law and military rule can be imposed anywhere on the planet, including in the United States. It's just a matter of discretion with the president. He may have withheld military law in the United States now, but under the framework that 9/11, a fight against international terrorism, is war in the international sense, he could do that today, tomorrow, or otherwise. So, in my judgment, 9/11 itself was a horrible, murderous, criminal operation. There have been those tried, Mr. Moussaoui, for complicity in those abominations, and he's been sentenced to life imprisonment. But to conduct warfare in response to crime seems to me itself a crime of aggression. Secondly, if we can go to the issue of invading Iraq in 2003. Remember, the crime of aggression was established in the Nuremberg Principles post-World War II. And when one country invades another that's not threatening its sovereignty, its people, that customarily is viewed as a crime of aggression, just like Hitler's invasion of the Sudetenland, his attack on Poland, or otherwise. Now, I submit, what was happening when we invaded Iraq in March of 2003 that was dangerous to the United States, that created an imminent or an actual threat to our sovereignty? I don't believe that it comes close to satisfying any reasonable definition of an imminent danger. Many thought he was possessing or seeking weapons of mass destruction. But that was so remote, it would never satisfy a requirement of imminence to justify war to protect national sovereignty. In addition, Iraq was a crime against the Constitution, because the Congress of the United States didn't authorize the commencement of hostilities. It delegated, in my judgment, unconstitutionally, the decision whether or not to go to war to the president. The Founding Fathers were unanimous. They did not want one person or one group of people to cross that Rubicon between a state of peace and a state of war. Fastened that responsibility solely on the Congress of the United States, and the United States Supreme Court said a treaty cannot override that obligation, so whatever the United Nations said, it could not exclude Congress from the decision maker, and nevertheless, we invaded Iraq. And when we can move on to President, I say, concession to the shortness of life, I'll wrap up, but the Libyan war, equally, if not more so, unconstitutional, crime of aggression, no threat by Libya to the United States of America, no authorization from Congress, no money appropriated by Congress. The president went to war unilaterally, flouting both international as well as constitutional obligations, and I think it's time for the American people and the Congress to stand up and say, you need to stop that, or we'll impeach you for high crimes and misdemeanors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.